Today on Locked On Rockies, Daniel Bard has officially rewritten his story.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 15th day of November in the year 2022. I am your Rockies fan extraordinaire, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, well, guess what? You are in the right spot, because that's what we do each and every day here on the Locked On Rockies podcast. We are free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. All you got to do is search Locked On Rockies, and you'll be taken to where you need to go. We're also streaming live on YouTube. All of our episodes are recorded live on YouTube, usually in the afternoons here, about in between 1 or 2 o'clock Pacific time. If you want to check us out there, I know that might not always be the time, but if you're on your lunch break, maybe getting ready for your early drive home, you can join the live chat if you can text from your car safely, not while you're driving, of course. If you want to hop in and know when we go live, you just got to just subscribe to Locked On Rockies on YouTube. It's a massive help when you do so, and it helps the show grow, and it helps me out as well. So check it out as well. And you're like, well, why would I want to help you? Well, because I am your Rockies fan extraordinaire. I'm your guy. I'm your Rockies fan who loves to dish about the Rockies, loves to talk about the team in purple, and probably gives you a little bit of an insight from just the fans' perspective, or at least this one fan's perspective and thoughts about the baseball team in Colorado. And today on Locked On Rockies, we're going to talk about Daniel Bard, someone I don't think we talked about enough, and someone that hasn't been talked about enough in a wider circle. And before I dive into his numbers and kind of we reflect on his season, the story is really there. Reminder, before Daniel Bard was pitching for the Rockies, he was out of baseball for 7 years. The last time he pitched was in 2013 with the Red Sox. I mean, that is a tremendous amount of time and a tremendous amount of your prime, amount of your athletic career, of your abilities that aren't being used. For him to come back in the utmost season of uncertainty, I mean, the pandemic, your performance, everything, all kind of needed to fall in place on top of him performing for Daniel Bard, and it has. And it's a reminder that taking a risk, taking a chance, and getting after it sometimes is what people need to do, and is something that we should look at when we're talking about the caliber and quality of player. When you are looking at someone to be a leader in your clubhouse, a leader of your team, Daniel Bard's an example. Daniel Bard took it on the chin. He got knocked out of the game due to himself, basically. He had to fight one of the hardest enemies in all of enemies, is himself. And not only does he overcome that, he has now overcome it and arguably should have been an all-star last year. I know relievers, closers, it's different. It's harder as a pitcher, but when you're looking at the numbers, Daniel Bard was able to go from probably at least the lowest point of his professional career. And while he's not on a flashy team like the Red Sox and hasn't been on Rockies teams that have been making big splashes in terms of making chases for playoffs and things of that nature, he's been really good. Really good. He's proven to not only himself, but he's proven to the game of baseball that not only can he still do it, but he can come back from it and he can hang with the best of them. It would be one thing if Daniel Bard was simply just fine. And you look at some of his numbers and that, right, you might say that, but last year, especially last year, and a lot during the pandemic too, Daniel Bard has been awesome. Daniel Bard has been exactly what the Rockies needed. And unfortunately, he's gotten bit a couple of times, sure, but the Rockies have been in enough close games that Daniel Bard has been able to hold on. There's not a lot of times that you can feel super confident in letting in a one-run ball game with a Rockies bullpen piece coming up to be a factor, to play a role. And Daniel Bard has been, more often than not, really good in that role. That's a whole other layer of his story and his profession and what he does as a pitcher because he's a closer. I mean, it's the one of the most difficult positions to be in baseball, the closer, the guy whose job is to just shut the door. And more often than not, it's not so easy to get those last 3 outs. It's so hard to get major league batters out, and one little mistake, you only get the one opportunity. Your job is to come in the highest of high emotion, high energy, critical moments of the game and been stellar. But he has rose to the occasion, and you just got to wonder what that does for your confidence as a person, what that does for your confidence as a player. To be Daniel Bard right now, to earn your way into another multi-year deal. Reminder that Daniel Bard was re-signed by the Colorado Rockies to continue pitching with them here. He re-signed there he's under contract from 2023 and 2024. I mean, he's now going to pitch with the Rockies almost as long as he was out of the game. That's incredible to me. That's a story that's important and good for Daniel Bard and good for the Rockies as well. This was a move this was an example of the Rockies taking a risk on a veteran and getting it right. This is when you have to sit there and say when the Rockies have gotten it right. I know it's hard to do a lot of the times, but there are moments when the Rockies have done things correctly, and the Rockies have hit on two things, two key pieces that if they were able to hit on just a little earlier, it could have drastically changed the future of this team by getting Daniel Bard and CJ Cron. Those were two solid vets that the Rockies not only did they bring in, but gave expanded roles to, gave the opportunity to be the star. And both of those players have rose to the occasion. And you could probably say more so Daniel Bard than CJ Cron. I mean, CJ Cron being the team's all-star last year and main offensive generator in a lot of in certain categories might beg to differ. But overall, he has been excellent for the Colorado Rockies. He has been someone that that the Rockies have been able to turn to, and someone the Rockies should have confidence in turning to next year. Now, should the Rockies move on from Daniel Bard? How good was he in 2022? What do the numbers say? Let's dive into that. But before we do that, got to tell you about some of the folks that help make this show possible. And that includes BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting info, stats, news, and analysis. And folks, this is for all of your betting needs. If you're trying to get in on the latest football action, if you're trying to get in on these midweek Maction games, if you're trying to do something crazy and go out there, BetOnline is going to be helping you out with all the betting resources that you need. They have all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football, basketball, soccer. You even can do the MLB future props and things like that, and off-season props, all sorts of stuff. And guess what? If you like the esports, they got those too at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find more of those at betonline.net, even though I know this one's your favorite. And but they're the fastest. They're the easiest way to get your betting fixed at betonline.net. Head to the website, that's betonline.net today, or use your mobile device to learn more at BetOnline. BetOnline.net. BetOnline, where the game starts. We are talking about Daniel Bard, and we were kind of talking about how in the first segment we're more of the story of Daniel Bard. Let's dive into the numbers of Daniel Bard. Let's take a look and see how Daniel Bard actually performed this year. And Daniel Bard was great for the Colorado Rockies. Honestly, I am going to use the word great. Daniel Bard was a great closer for the Colorado Rockies. Daniel Bard was someone that the Rockies were able to turn to and able to go to count on in crucial situations when the offense was so little. When the Rockies did have leads late in games, it was confidence building to know that Daniel Bard was going to be the one to come in and slam the door. Did he have issues giving up long balls and hits? Yes. Did he have some issues with some walks as well? Sure. But then he went on, his consistency outweighs those. And as much as for a closer, a blown save or a big blown game that we saw multiple meltdowns from the bullpen, Bard included this year, those were few and far between for Bard himself. Let's take a look at the numbers here. Bard in 2022 was 6-4 with a 1.79 ERA in 57 games. He had 34 saves over 60 innings pitched, 69 strikeouts, and a whip of .994. If you want to compare that there to his career numbers, his career ERA is a 3.64. He's got 428 strikeouts and a whip of 1.252. So well below in some areas when it comes to whip and ERA. Also, lots of saves. He basically more than doubled his career saves this year for the with the Colorado Rockies. This year for Colorado, he was also able to set a new record in games that he was in. Let's see. Actually, let me make sure I'm getting this right. Yeah, it was a new record in saves for Bard. He got 14 more saves this year. Obviously, his role as a pitcher has changed throughout his time, especially when you look at all of the differences in his journey to get to Colorado's bullpen. So maybe when you're looking at the saves and things, you might want to kind of pump the brakes, but let's take a look from last year. 5 less innings pitched for Bard this year, but 14 more saves. And in those games as well, when you're looking at earned runs for Bard, he dropped his earned runs from 38 to 12 in 2022. That's a 26 run drop off for Daniel Bard and those are earned runs as well, as long as I'm making sure I'm following my table correctly. Yes, those are earned runs. In 2021, Daniel Bard gave up 38 earned runs. In 2022, he gave up 12. In 2021, he gave up 41 hits. This year, he gave up 15. He cut his walks down by 11, 25 walks. Now, 5 less innings pitched. That's a factor that you can put into some of those numbers. They're not going to come close, though, folks. He's not going to give up that many, and he gave up 5 less home runs. He went from 8 home runs given up in 2021 to only 3 given up in 2022. Those are incredible improvements. Those are great closing numbers for the Rockies. And let's dive into the live chat here. El Mozilla says, I agree Bard has been a crazy awesome comeback story. And he says, the Red Sox wouldn't be that great of a team to be on differences. They'll buy in and they can change their fates a lot quicker than the Rockies. And we did a whole episode on the Jose Urena signing. And welcome in, Spencer's Life. Welcome into the show. It's nice to have a reliable closer. I feel like we haven't had a reliable closer since Houston Street. That's what, when you look at these numbers, when you look at those and when you see that improvement from his first year in Colorado to this year, that's awesome. That means navigating Coors Field. He's navigating Coors Field better. He's handling that issues, and he's performing well on the road. Really great stuff for Daniel Bard there. Let's take a look at how Daniel Bard factored compared to the rest of the closers in the game. Daniel Bard's 34 saves put him in the top 5 in baseball. He was behind Jordan Romano, Liam Hendricks, Kenley Jansen, and Emmanuel Clase for saves this year. Top 5 in saves, and he had more saves this year than Edwin Diaz. I mean, there were no trumpets blaring for Crone. I shouldn't say Crone. Bard. He had more saves than Paul Sewald. He had more saves than Ryan Presley. Both of them. I mean, it's close. He only had one more save than them, but he had a lower ERA than Presley, a higher ERA than Diaz. Diaz does have that over him, but still more saves than Diaz, higher than, it wasn't quite as good, but the batting average numbers are similar. And Daniel Bard was striking out. He had a 2.8 walk to strike ratio. Not as nice as some of these other numbers here. And some of the company that he was here, Kenley Jansen, one of the ones that's up there as well. But he was also one of the leaders in innings pitched, one of the higher amounts there. There's a few other people that had 60 in there as well. But reliability is so key from your closer, and that's exactly what happened when it came to they just it's exactly what they got from Daniel Bard, and that is so key. Hopefully it continues for the Rockies. He is getting a little bit older. He is having that is one thing to face, but right now there's no issue there's nothing to sit here and believe or have any issue thinking have any hesitation with Daniel Bard. I mean, there's no reason to really be that worried. You don't need to, you can't sit here and say, oh, he's immediately going to be one of the best in the business. Again, if he's top 5 in saves, if he's competing with all of those numbers and he's right in the mix with all those things, great. I'm not sitting here and say Bard needs to be the best closer in the game. He just needs to keep being this Daniel Bard and keep telling and keep expanding this story, because Daniel Bard helps the Rockies win. Now, should the Rockies hang on to Daniel Bard? Is that the right move for the Rockies to get back to the playoffs? Is that going, is Daniel Bard with his contract and the current state of the Rockies, is that the best thing the Rockies should do for their roster? Let's talk about that in just a second. Folks, the live chat is popping off today here. We got new faces. We got old faces. Eric Harper's here. Nicholas Duvall's here. And Ab Rock's Hot Takes is here. So let's dive into the live chat. Reminder, you can know when we are streaming every episode of Locked On Rockies live on YouTube by subscribing to Locked On Rockies on YouTube. And you can jump into the live chat. We take questions. And, hey, especially this offseason is best time to ask your questions and for us to go through them. So let's take a couple of comments, I should say, here from the live chat. I don't know why I said that and went in there, but Spencer's Life says, we traded Nolan and Trevor, which did not help the Rockies whatsoever. The Rockies did not trade Trevor Story. Trevor Story left in free agency. They should have traded Trevor Story, but they did not. Nolan Arenado, the trade, well, we'll see if it's going to pay off. That's really the proof is going to be in the pudding of the two top prospects of that trade. We know what we're getting from Austin Gomber, and I believe one other piece of the Rockies of that trade, the Rockies did not offer or did not protect in the draft today, so he might be moving on from the Rockies. Elmo Selick says, kind of wish we traded Story when we had the chance. He just walked and we got nothing due for it. Yep, that's exactly one of the big issues and one of the big faults of the Rockies has been the lack of the trade when these players were going to move on. They were confident and thought that they can bring these players back. Sure, I know that that's not what they thought for Trevor Story, but they believe the draft pick was better than what they were going to get for Trevor Story, I think. But the Rockies' lack of pitching depth at the minor league level, the lack of bullpen help that you're seeing for the Rockies, the lack of exciting pitching prospects is also due to the fact that the Rockies have not used the trade very well at all. And that leads into the next question. Should the Rockies trade Daniel Bard? And the Rockies should trade, if Daniel Bard is good and the Rockies are not, you should trade Daniel Bard, a closer with another year. If he's solid with another year left on the deal, it's not just a rental, is going to be able to get you a good little return. The Rockies need to bolster up and help their relief pitching and their bullpen depth. And it all needs to, and a lot of it they believe is going to come from the system, but they don't have really a lot of exciting stuff in the farm system, especially left-hand pitching. That's something you have to think about. The Rockies this year, especially on the precipice of having a lot of their prospects going to be up and playing at the major league level, can use this year to move on from some of the veteran talent, beef up with some prospects, and let them go out and chase the championship while preparing for your prospect-led future. However, if Chris Bryant has as big of an impact as the Rockies think that he is going to have on the lineup, if the Rockies, led by Montero and these players that they've committed to, and a pitching staff that is bouncing back, you need someone like you need Daniel Bard to have any form of a chance to make a run, because he is your closer and he's the best one. the Rockies are very far away from making a run, or at least on paper, and the players there. Teams can get hot, teams can build random combos, yes, but if you are going to make a run, Daniel Bard is going to play a role in that. And if the Rockies are in any form of a competitive window near the trade deadline, they will not trade Daniel Bard. I can guarantee you that. The Rockies need to be so far out of it and actually fully buy into playing their prospects and playing these younger guys for another developmental year before trying to beef up and get ready for a 2024 season with this new look Rockies with all these new faces. You need to move on from Bard. But if they are sniffing the competitive window, if they are sniffing that third wild card, Daniel Bard is going nowhere. At Rock's Hot Take says, Bard was one of the season-long highlights. Keep being Bard. I agree. Keep being Daniel Bard. If the Rockies get more of the same from Daniel Bard, that is awesome. A thing to be worried about with Daniel Bard, which he didn't show this year because he showed improvement in these areas, would be long balls and giving up home runs and things of that nature. But again, I'd like to see the walks down. That would be my big thing is I'd like to see the walks. They if you dropped at 11 from 2021 to 2022, can you drop it from there? Especially when you imagine the Rockies are going to be leaning leaning on him probably again. Bard is going to pitch 60 plus innings. He could be flirting with that 65 innings pitched again. So he's going to have to be consistent, and that's free bases from the bullpen in the closer role. Just it needs to continue to go down. That's the biggest critique I have with Daniel Bard is sometimes he can get hit hard and he doesn't locate his pitches very well, and he just kind of if he misses, he kind of misses badly, and the walks. But again, let's take a look at the numbers. Let's look at what we saw from the sample size as a whole this year and not just remember the frustrating times and bullpen meltdowns and remind ourselves that the Rockies, as bad as they were, won as many games this year as they did because of Daniel Bard. Daniel Bard, with his save total, reminder, Daniel Bard had 34 saves in this season. And the Rockies' overall record in 2022, 68 wins. Daniel Bard was responsible and in half of the Rockies' wins. Half of the Rockies' wins were Daniel Bard saves. You can chalk that up to. That's how big of a deal, that's how good, and that's how impactful Daniel Bard was for the Colorado Rockies. He was the reason the Rockies won close games. He was the reason why their offense would get bailed out. Daniel Bard, outside of Brendan Rodgers, was probably the best Rockies player last year. And I don't think it's that big of a stretch to say. I think when the season came to a close, and when things and the season panned out the way it did, Daniel Bard and Brendan Rodgers were above and beyond the two most impactful. CJ Cron was too, but 34 saves for Daniel Bard. That means Daniel Bard was in the game and shut the door. And won a close ball game 34 times for the Rockies. That is half of the Rockies' wins. I think that's how we'll close our review of Daniel Bard. That's how important he was to the team, and that's how impactful he was out of the bullpen. Eric Harper sums it up best. When Bard came into the game, it felt like we had a real chance to win. Bard had that caliber of a closer that, hey, if he gets ahead and if he's thrown and if his velo and movement's there, good night. Good luck. Really, really cool. Even with all the Rockies struggles and all the Rockies frustrations, always cool to say that the Rockies had one of the best pitchers in baseball in the season. Folks, that is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go make the Locked On Sports Today podcast your second listen. You can find out everything you need to know about the world of sports there. And if you want to stay up to date with things in the world of Colorado sports, why don't you check out the Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, and Locked On Nuggets podcast? An absolutely poppin' live chat today. El Masiliak, we got Spencer's Life, Nicholas Duval, Eric Harper at Rocks Hot Takes, all in the live chat today. Thank you so much for joining us. You can be part of the live chat by subscribing to Locked On Rockies on YouTube and knowing when we go live. And make sure that you subscribe on your favorite streaming service. Hit that 5-star rating. Let your friends know about this daily Rockies podcast. Let's have some fun as we talk about Rockies baseball all throughout the offseason and get ready for another season of Rockies baseball together. You can find me at Paul Holden 33. You can find the show at LO Rockies on Twitter. And until next time, I'm Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.